Let's jump right into this explainer. We're gonna peel back the layers of a massive pop culture hit. You know the iconic imagery: kids on bikes, glowing waffles, battling otherworldly forces. But today, we're diving into the unbelievable and honestly entirely unverified Cold War conspiracy theory that literally birthed the whole thing. We are talking about the Montauk Project.
What if the Upside Down was real? It's a fun question to ask, right? Well, long before the show was set in the sleepy, fictional town of Hawkins, Indiana, its entire premise was anchored to a very real, decommissioned military base out on the far edge of Long Island. The show was directly built on top of an urban legend so incredibly wild, it involved government mind control, time travel, physically manifested monsters, and, yeah, kids with psychic powers.
Moving on to the inspiration for Stranger Things, specifically the 2015 Netflix pitch.
What's absolutely fascinating here is that the creators, the Duffer Brothers, originally pitched their supernatural thriller to Netflix with a very simple title, Montauk. They were totally open about the fact that this initial concept was a love letter to 80s sci-fi, completely and directly inspired by a bizarre real-world urban legend. I mean, their pilot script literally opened with a boy vanishing near the Montauk Air Force Base. It triggered this whole mystery with secretive agents, a hidden lab, and a psychic girl. The monster was even called the Montauk Monster. They actually only relocated the story to a fictional town for legal and budget reasons, because, well, shooting a TV show on Long Island is just too expensive.
Now, let's look at the real camp hero, a documented Cold War outpost.
To really get the myth, we need to understand the facts first. For decades, Camp Hero wasn't some spooky mythological site at all. It was a highly active, totally vital military outpost. Established back in 1942, its job was to protect New York Harbor from Nazi U-boats, so it was outfitted with these massive underground ammunition bunkers. Then, as the Cold War heated up, the base was transformed into a radar surveillance station. We're talking about a massive 80-foot radar network sending data to the SAGE computer system, tracking potential Soviet bombers from hundreds of miles away. But warfare evolves. Once intercontinental ballistic missiles became the new threat, that giant radar system became completely obsolete.
So, when the military officially closed the base in 1981, they left behind this massive, eerily silent installation. They sealed up the underground tunnels with thick concrete, and those giant radar towers, they were just left to rot right there on the edge of the Atlantic. And because the land didn't immediately transfer to civilian control, it just sat there, completely abandoned but heavily secured. As you can imagine, this was the absolute perfect breeding ground for local conspiracy theorists. People started wondering, was the Air Force withdrawal just a cover story? Was there something much more secretive going on underground?
Which brings us to the Philadelphia experiment, the precursor conspiracy.
Before the Montauk legends blew up, there was a much older myth from 1943 that eventually completely fused with the Camp Hero lore. The story goes that in October of 1943, the U.S. Navy ran a highly classified test on a destroyer escort called the USS Eldridge. The supposed goal? To achieve literal invisibility by weaponizing Einstein's unified field theory. Basically, they were trying to bend light and radar right around the ship using incredibly intense magnetic fields. But, according to the legend, the experiment went horribly wrong and caused a catastrophic rip in space-time. The ship supposedly vanished from Philadelphia, popped up in Virginia 200 miles away, and then teleported right back.
Now, the most crucial thing to know is how this wild story actually started. It all came from a single, unverified, cryptic letter sent by a guy named Carlos Allende to a UFO researcher. The letter described absolutely horrific consequences. He claims sailors were fused into the solid steel bulkheads of the ship, others went completely insane, and some just vanished into thin air. Naturally, the Navy has officially and repeatedly denied this ever took place. But this one letter cemented these core sci-fi themes: invisibility, teleportation, catastrophic physics that would lay dormant for decades, only to violently resurface later at Montauk.
Okay, let's jump to the Montauk Project claims and see how they engineered a modern myth.
This brings us back to Long Island in the late 1980s and early 90s. An electrical engineer named Preston Nichols published a book claiming he had suddenly recovered suppressed memories of working in a secret underground lab at Camp Hero. He mapped out this wildly elaborate sci-fi setup centered around a device he called the Montauk chair. So here's how it supposedly worked. First, a psychic sits in this highly specialized chair. Then, their brainwaves are scanned and amplified by massive computers, which, by the way, he claimed were built using secret tech from Manhattan Project architect John von Neumann. Finally, if the psychic concentrated hard enough, they could physically materialize objects right out of thin air,
project their consciousness, or literally rip holes in space and time to create swirling time vortexes. Now, to keep these experiments running, Nichols claimed the researchers needed a steady supply of test subjects. And this is where the lore takes a really dark turn with the Montauk Boys narrative. Nichols alleged that young, psychically malleable teenage boys were abducted off the streets, subjected to severe trauma-based conditioning to amp up their abilities, and then forced to literally walk through these time portals. It's a deeply disturbing claim for sure, but it is absolutely vital to point out that no missing children reports from the Montauk area during that time ever supported this dark narrative of government abductions.
According to Nichols, all of this massive scientific hubris finally came crashing down on August 12, 1983. Their primary psychic, a guy named Duncan Cameron, was strapped into the chair. Whether it was accidental or totally on purpose, Duncan inadvertently manifested this unstoppable, aggressive, massive beast straight from his subconscious. The creature materialized inside the underground facility and just started tearing the place apart. And because the monster was sustained by Duncan's thoughts, the only way to kill it was for the researchers to grab axes and permanently smash millions of dollars of their own equipment, severing the power and slamming the portal shut forever.
Okay, as if that wasn't wild enough, in the late 80s, another man named Al Bielek threw absolute gas on the fire. He started showing up at paranormal conferences claiming that he was actually Duncan Cameron's time-traveling brother. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Bielek alleged that back in 1943, during that Philadelphia experiment we talked about, the two of them jumped off the USS Eldridge to escape the green fog, fell through a time vortex, landed in some floating AI society in the 28th century, and were eventually zapped back to Montauk in 1983. Why? To shut down the rogue experiment. He claimed the equipment at Camp Hero had created a catastrophic 40-year time lock with the generators on the Eldridge.
As the 90s rolled on, Preston Nichols just kept writing books, and he kept layering on increasingly unbelievable elements. He claimed the Montauk chair was actually reverse-engineered from ancient subterranean machines. He added extraterrestrials, Greys, and Nordics, just casually working alongside human scientists. He even wove in real historical events, claiming Nazi occult scientists brought over via Operation Paperclip were the ones really running the show. Oh, and he stated the entire base was geometrically aligned to channel energy from the pyramids of Giza. But here's the kicker. Despite all these massive, world-altering claims, Nichols and his crew never provided a single document, artifact, or photograph to verify any of it. Not one.
So, moving from conspiracy to Netflix, where fact meets fiction.
Let's see how this whole web of conspiracy builds into the show we all know today. Despite the complete lack of evidence, these wild, interwoven claims formed the ultimate sci-fi mystery box. The Duffer Brothers looked at this mythology and brilliantly reverse-engineered it into pure television gold. When you put them side by side, it is crystal clear that almost every major piece of Stranger Things lore is a one-to-one translation of Preston Nichols' claims. Camp Hero? That becomes Hawkins National Lab. The psychic subject Duncan Cameron? He becomes 11. The Montauk chair swapped for her sensory deprivation tank. That swirling time vortex is the Upside Down, and the manifested beast that destroyed the lab? That is undeniably 100% the Demogorgon.
Ultimately, Camp Hero today is just a peaceful state park. You can go there right now, hike the trails, and take pictures of that massive, looming radar tower. And while we might never uncover psychic chairs, time-traveling brothers, or interdimensional portals hiding beneath the concrete, this explainer shows exactly how the mystery of a secretive, abandoned base can totally capture our collective imagination. It really just takes a few sealed blast doors and a rusting radar dish to blur the line between fact and fiction and spawn one of the greatest sci-fi stories of our time. So the next time you see a restricted area sign on some old abandoned building, you really have to ask yourself, what kind of story is waiting to be manifested inside? Thanks for exploring this with me today, and keep questioning the world around you.